Hey everyone, it's Faith from the Literacy View, and I have something exciting to share. Big Sky has done it again with over 25 hours of powerful literacy content. We're talking mentor recordings, real talk, and absolutely no fluff. And guess what? We've got an exclusive just for our listeners. Normally, it's $199, but not for you. Use the code LiteracyView. That's LITERACYVIEW, all one word, but $30 off. And if you're ready to lead and grow, the Literacy Leadership Mentorship is now open. Same code, same savings. Oh, and yes, the swag is live. You don't have to be in Montana to wear it with pride. All the links are in our show notes. This is the Literacy View, where the nonsense stops and the learning takes off. All codes are in the show notes. That's the Literacy View.
Hi, everyone. It's Judy Boxner from the Literacy View, live from the Big Sky Literacy Summit in Montana. Woo-hoo! We have some very special guests here today, and we're really, really excited. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So here we go. We're live from Montana, and the topic today is Syntax is Everything.
So I'm Julie Van Dyke. I am a research scientist. I was at Haskins Laboratories for 22 years or so. I still am affiliated with Yale University and the University of Connecticut, and I'm the chief scientist of Cascade Reading.
I'm Nancy Eberhardt, and I have been a teacher, administrator, curriculum material provider, and developer. And I'm learning every day more and more about syntax. So I'm happy to be here at Big Sky.
Thanks. I'm Carla Stanford, and I'm a teacher at Harvard, and now I have transitioned into professional development and learning about syntax and language comprehension. And I work for Reading Universe. I'm the director of instructional design, where we work to give teachers the what to teach, the why to teach, and the how to teach, and teaching kids to read and write.
I'm very honored to be sitting with such wonderful, passionate, like-minded literacy women. And so we're going to start. So the first thing I want to say off the record is our flight. 3 people in this room had a very hard flight. We were flying from New York City, and we were midair, and we flew for about 3 hours, and then we had to fly back to JFK because the plane had some problems, and then we had to get back on the plane, a new plane, and then we got to fly to Montana. So a lot of us have been in the air for quite some bit of time. So it shows what a commitment to literacy and to moving the work forward these wonderful women have today. So we're going to begin. So the topic today is Syntax is Everything. And it's very interesting for me. A lot of you know that my background before my life in structured literacy was in reading recovery. I'm not embarrassed to say it. It is a part of my story. And everybody knows that I've been very invested in shifting towards the science of reading for about the last 9 years. And it is a big part of my life. But I have to say one thing that's a little controversial and a little bit interesting. I felt like sometimes in my reading recovery days, I don't think they got it right. But the word syntax came up in professional development more than it did right now. So that's why I'm really honored that this conference that I'm at right now, the whole focus is language. And I think that it's a very important part of literacy to really go deeper into it, because I think a lot of people, especially where I'm from in New York City, we've been focusing so much on, for the last couple of years, on decoding, phonemic awareness, and so forth, and getting kids to, break the code. But I think that the topic of syntax, grammar, vocabulary, and comprehension also, and language, deserves a lot of respect. So I'm really happy to dig deeper into this topic. And I want to go way deeper than my roots were in reading recovery. When we talked about syntax, it was very surface level. It was basically tied, yes, I'm going to say it, to the cueing system. We would say, does it sound right? And we would just look at, okay, if a kid said wented and the word was went, we would give them feedback that this is the way to say it. It was very surface level. So I'm honored to be sitting with women that know this topic way deeper than even I do. And we're going to begin. So ladies, you already told me a little bit about yourselves. Can you tell me a little bit about the latest research findings? I know you sent me some research findings that I looked at last night and a couple of days before that as well, before the flight. And I want to know a little bit more, what are the latest research findings in terms of syntax and language?
Well, I guess I'll start with that. So it's a
Open forum, very laid back.
I want to say that this is a humongous field. I've been a language researcher really since the beginning of my career. I started actually in computational linguistics, building models of how the brain processes language. And so for that, we actually did experiments to understand what is the millisecond by millisecond operations that the brain follows. So there's been a humongous amount of research, both in terms of linguistics and psychology and cognitive science and computer science, very complicated, well worked out models of how the brain processes language. And all of these have very primary roles for syntax, but none of that has really been connected to the science of reading dialogue or the literacy community. So that's really my goal in being here and in starting to talk about syntax is everything. There's constantly research going on. Most of it I'm not even aware of. So to point to one particular study would be very difficult. I will say that earlier this year, I attended the 38th annual conference of sentence processing, which is filled with research on how we process syntax. But again, that community is not really connected to reading or literacy. And so that's one of the main goals that we're working together, all of us, to advance.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that, and it actually piggybacks, Judy, on something you said, which is in the issues of perspectives, language on literacy. From IDA, there's two issues on syntax comes first. And one of the articles there that I think speaks to us as teachers, and the point you were making, is that we know now, and the article was by Deacon and others, that the ability for young children to have syntactic knowledge is as predictive of their subsequent ability to comprehend what they're reading. It's as predictive as the word reading skills. And I think why that's important is what you were saying, which is we don't want to continue, or we need to create a little more equity, if you will, in the language comprehension side of our reading and paying attention to what students can do, because that's as predictive as word reading. So I don't want to use the word balance, but I think we need to be providing more balance.
I actually appreciate you saying that, because I think the word balance, sometimes everybody just associates it with balanced literacy, and that was bad, and we have to let go of everything that was bad. But balance can be something positive in this aspect.
Yes, I think so. And I think it's thinking of the word balanced with giving time, attention, in the sense of importance to their contribution. And by delaying, and I think with that, by delaying and doing decoding sequentially and then focusing on more of the language comprehension, I think we're doing our kids a disservice. So I think that would be the research that I think
absolutely.
is important.
Yeah. And I guess this is not a specific study, but just the other observation, which again, I've been speaking about this a lot to literacy communities. I think it's important to understand we've all now gotten on board with the idea that phonics is the core part of word recognition. And from a scientific point of view, what we as scientists had to show was how central that is and how the brain uses phonological information from the very beginning. On the side of comprehension, there is an equally, actually probably larger body of research that talks about how fast syntax comes into play, and that it is the core of language comprehension. But that, again, hasn't been integrated. So if you really look at sort of the logic, we want to increase awareness and ability to teach and and develop language skills to support comprehension, just the same way that we are doing the same thing with phonics at the center of the decoding part of the instruction. So,
Can I be honest? I don't see it happening in classrooms as much as I think it should be.
I would like to suggest that Carla picks up on this point because we've been doing some work together, and I think it's looking at the structured literacy or structured language lesson format through a little different lens. Maybe you'd want to pick up on that.
Well,
That'd be
first
great.
of all, I would like to say that as a teacher who has learned over the years, thankfully, how to teach the decoding piece, the language comprehension piece felt very siloed. And it was about 4 or 5 years ago that I actually learned the domains of language and could say that syntax was one of the domains, but then I still felt really uneasy about what exactly that is. And it was this time last year at Big Sky, listening to Julie, sitting with Nancy, beginning to take in this whole idea of like, what is syntax and how does the work that we're doing with our children, how can I take what Julie is doing in her research and all the other researchers and make sure that this work isn't siloed, that, for instance, we are not going to have this air quotes syntax part of the day.
Right.
Syntax has to be integrated.
Right.
And what had to happen for me first was to understand how does syntax play out for children. So it's all about sentence structure, and every kid comes to school with their own oral language, and they need direct, explicit instruction, systematic, cumulative instruction in syntax, just like they would in sound letter correspondence. And what does that look like? It starts with the grammatical building blocks of understanding that a word, I'm just going to use the word bat because we like to use the word bat, like the word bat has multiple meanings. And that can be a namer, right? A noun. And that could also be an action. Well, when I taught first grade, that's probably where I would have stopped. Actually, that is where I stopped. We talked about multiple meaning words. We talked about you could use them in, these words in 2 different ways, but we never took it to the sentence level of like, oh my goodness, now that you know this, you can do some intentional predicting because your brain, when it sees the bat, goes, oh, namer. When you say that, that's an action. That is something we do. And that these standards that I had as a first grade teacher, which one of them was, teach your kids what a noun is. Well, we made the cutest song and we learned about a noun and it's a person, place, thing, or idea. But we didn't do anything with that knowledge because I didn't understand why does it matter if my kids know that a noun is a namer, to then go into sentences and to go into discourse. So we're working to like hammer that out. And it's a learning process. We've been doing some work in, I did some model lessons and playing with lesson plans to think about like taking a phonics lesson, being very intentional about the words you choose.
Great.
Choosing words that have multiple meanings that can be used in multiple ways, talking to kids about that, teaching them who or what did what, as opposed to just noun and verb that mean nothing to them. And then building these sentence structures, which then will help them when they comprehend, because then we can do it in discourse across a paragraph or a passage. I feel like my learning is just every day. I'm learning from these women.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I love that you mentioned the word phonics and mentioned that this is something that doesn't have to be separate and it could be embedded. And I think that that's such an important piece that I think we have so many missed opportunities in the classroom, because I think so many educators right now are so overwhelmed. A lot of their time is micromanaged. Now they're being bombarded. They're getting new programs. And one thing we say on the Literacy View, there's no perfect program. There's not. Programs come and go. Some are better than others, but there's always an opportunity to embed best practices right into your phonics block. So even if you're doing foundations, you could do it. Even if you're doing UFLI, you can do it. And we will definitely dig deeper into how you can make these things happen throughout your literacy block.
And I'd like to say to that, I think what you're speaking to is teachers' knowledge can be applied to any program. And one of the things that Carla was describing are materials that are being created for the reading universe, which is free material, informational for the teacher to know how to embed and incorporate these elements about language comprehension, the syntactic building blocks, and so on. So teachers can turn to the reading universe as that is being built out as a resource to add this to their phonics.
And that's free.
And that's free.
Yes.
We will be adding that to the show notes. So today we're live streaming. I will upload it like a regular podcast as well. And all these resources that are mentioned, which is amazing, and there's more free ones that we're going to discuss after, will be in the show notes. I will keep in touch with these wonderful women and we'll all explore together. I think that's going to be very helpful because I think a lot of us are very confused on how do we embed, when do we embed? Because even, for myself as a coach, a lot of my teachers, I saw when they were teaching reading, they were showing kids how to decode only during phonics. And I said, no, you can show kids how to decode during HMH time if you're using into reading, during writing time, because the brain likes to see things in multiple places and have multiple places to practice in order for the transference to happen.
I was just to say, one of the things that Nancy and I really, and the whole team with Kelly Powell-Smith, who was the co-theme editor of the IDA Perspectives issues, one of the things that we really wanted to emphasize was ways to reduce the stress about bringing syntax into the classroom.
That's great.
Many people don't necessarily feel that they're prepared to teach it. The methods are not so obvious. And so in Perspectives, we have Nancy and Margie Gillis from Literacy How wrote a two-part piece. We also have Nancy Hennessy and Julia Salamone who wrote pieces about specifically how to teach syntax. We also have a tremendous 6-page resource guide at the end, which collects a lot of resources, including books, online tutorials, teaching materials, a whole lot of stuff, online courses. There's also 3 pages of guidelines for what a teacher should know and what you should do in the classroom. And I think this is one way that we really try to support teachers in bringing this new area into their practice. I just wanted to mention also, I mentioned that I was the chief scientist at Cascade Reading. So this is a reading.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, so she said Cascade Reading. I've been looking at this. I called my co-host Faith Borkowski, who is not with me here today because she had a little bit of an emergency and everything's fine. But when I saw that Cascade, I was blown away.
I love it too.
Yeah.
It was so powerful. It was simple. It was straightforward. And my brain was on fire. I couldn't stop looking at it.
Well, maybe we
Let's
could
tell
just
us
say
about
quickly
it.
what it.
Yes,
what
please,
she has-
please.
As the non-developer of it, let me just tell you.
Yes.
If you put text in that you, whatever the text from a story, something you've written, it breaks and displays in a cascaded form the syntactic components of that text. So it helps us look at what is the text and understand what those units are so that we can then explain them, help the kids identify them while they're reading, not to name them, but to understand how the words work together to make meaning. And I think it's just a really remarkable tool. I'm so excited you got to look at it.
Yeah, I was really excited. And, I came here with my partner, Paul, who's actually watching us record. And it was funny because I was actually showing him the Cascade. I was so excited and asking him different parts of speech. And then I fell asleep because it was a long flight, but it was so much fun. And I thought it was so powerful on so many levels as a practitioner still in the field. I thought it was great for phrasing and fluency for kids because a lot of the kids that I work with privately and in the classrooms, they get very overwhelmed when they're seeing like even an oral reading fluency on a cadence or something. And there's so much line of text and they're like, they can read, but all of a sudden they, it's hard and it's overwhelming. This is such a great scaffold. I thought it was really great for learning parts of speech. Mm-hmm. It was thought-provoking for me. Then the other part is I connected it to the, what was that? The who did what and to whom, and I was connecting it and I was playing it by myself. And I've been an educator for 29 years. And I thought, you know what? Maybe even I could up my game a little bit, because if I up my game as a practitioner, who's going to benefit? The kids. Because I think sometimes we get comfortable with certain aspects of what we're teaching. It's easy for me to teach decoding, but to teach this, I wasn't as trained in it as much. Like I said, in reading recovery, it was basic. It was, does this sound right? This doesn't sound right. I'm curious about feedback on that, to go off topic for a second. In reading recovery, I know I said the bad word, we were trained to give kids feedback when they said something incorrectly. Now we just saw some speakers in the conference saying to embrace. So what do you guys think? I'm curious.
It's a shift.
It's a shift, right?
Because the way we learned in school, maybe when we were learning grammar,
Right.
and we were being taught how to diagram a sentence. Yes, I'm dating myself, but that was the question we may say, does it sound right? But that is not how we would address at this point. We would say, let me teach you the structure of how we're going to build the sentence with this linking verb is here in our written text. The way we're going to see this in book language, the way we're going to write it in order to communicate here in school and academic language. This is how we're going to structure our sentence. Always honoring and leveraging the home language.
Exactly. And I think that's so important.
Language variation, African American English dialect, or whether it's another language system like Spanish, that we remember that all of those language systems have the 5 domains. And so kids are coming in with syntax, and to them, there is a way that sentences are formed, and they learned it. And if they know the rules.
Exactly.
And so does it sound right? Goes out the door. We don't say that.
It never felt comfortable for me. So that's validated.
I just want to add, though, I do think there's that intuition of does it sound right is really crucial. And we can't completely throw that out, because that comes from your oral language development.
Yep.
And what you've learned in your environment. And so it's really crucial, for example, when a child is reading, oral reading fluency is the ability to read in a way that it does sound right. So if the kid isn't able to realize,
different, does it sound right? It's more of like, instead of explicit instruction, I'm asking you to lean back.
Or if you said something like that's grammatically not correct, are you giving kids feedback?
So it's more that instead of, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, this is the literacy view.
I wanted to say that, like, it's more that, hey, let me teach you how we're going to build this sentence. And then in the text, you'll understand how this text is going to sound. Is that? And then.
Yeah, I mean, I think that intuition that we have, that is the same thing that allows us to be fluent readers.
Yes.
Whether or not it sounds right. And when we are fluent readers, we can tell.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, BS besties! These are the decodables you've been waiting for.
I founded Tumbleweed to cover all 5 pillars of literacy: decoding, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, phonemic awareness, plus writing and rich read-alouds.
And guess what? It's for all kids learning to read, including older and neurodiverse learners.
The lessons are ready-made, evidence-based, and aligned to the science of reading.
And here's the big surprise. And guess what, Literacy View listeners? Get 10% off for Literacy View listeners only, plus a chance to win exclusive bonuses in a surprise raffle. Now, in order to qualify for this, you need to email faithandjudy@gmail.com. Once again, faithandjudy@gmail.com to get your code and your discount.
And don't forget to visit tumbleweedpublishing.com to learn more.
And from your No BS besties at the Literacy View, check out Tumbleweed books as soon as possible to get this exclusive deal. Thank you, No BS besties. Bye.
If you're not fluent, but maybe you're fluent in your home language in the oral domain, you might still have a sense of, that's what that sounds like in that language, but it doesn't sound like in this language. So
Right.
I don't know. There's something there that I think is very fundamental to language learning that is very important. One, just a sort of a scientific piece of
please
data.
add. I mean, I think
We were
that's what
talking
I
about
was learning
Cascade. So
about.
one of the things that Cascade does is to help children hear how the text should sound when they're reading it. And again, I'm talking about sentence fluency.
It has an audio component as
No,
well.
we just measured whether or not they could hear how the sentence would sound. And we asked them, when you're reading in Cascade, can you hear how the sentence sounds, like what it should sound? And
it
they
should
can
sound-
tell
it should
because
sound a
of the
certain way
guidance.
because of the guidance. and
Exactly,
the words
because of
written
the
on
visual,
page.
right, because of the
the way it's been
visual, the way
broken
it's
down.
been
Yeah.
set up, it helps you to know this is this is the syntactic chunk, this is where I should pause, this is what's related to what. It helps you with that phrasing piece that is.
I think it takes a lot of
what it sounds
cognitive
like.
load off for a lot of kids. And it's interesting working with kids. I haven't used the Cascade yet, which I will, and I'll introduce it to my teachers this year. But very often in books, I've been scooping, and kids will say, why are you taking your pencil, Miss Judy, and writing in the book? And I'm like, because there's going to be 1 million kids that I'm going to work with in the future that are going to appreciate the same scaffold. Kids have actually told me that it's so helpful for them. And I'm able to, because of that scaffold, accelerate the process much quicker, because I'm finding some kids, their issue is decoding. Some kids, it's decoding and phrasing and fluency. But for some kids, it's kind of a lot of phrasing and fluency work. And I think that this tool that you guys have developed can really support that. Am I right?
Right. And I would add to that, even without Cascade, though, I think it's a wonderful way to illustrate what we're talking about. But I think what you're doing, Judy, by scooping or clustering words in a sentence is showing the students what the meaning units are within a sentence. So these words go together. The big, beautiful dog goes together because those words hang together as a noun clause or noun phrase, excuse me. Then the big, beautiful dog sat, and then we said in the grass. Well, in the grass goes together because that's telling us where. And that leads to one of the things we're talking a lot about in this bridging between what is syntax and what do I do about it as a teacher is to talk about it in functional terms. What are those words telling us when they work together? And how do we teach the kids to look for those units that work together to make meaning? Cascade's helping us because it shows us what works together, but we don't always have cascaded text.
And it takes, like, again, sort of on the category of taking the pressure off the teacher. So any text that the teacher is working with, she or he could cascade it and it will do that scooping for them. And then there's also the Explorer view, which will tell you where's the subject, where's the predicate, where are the direct objects, where are the nouns, all of that. All of that is really a tool to help, again, take the load off the teachers. We also have studies that have shown that if students are just reading in the Cascade, even without a lot of teacher coaching, just reading in the Cascade helps the students to increase their comprehension and their syntactic ability because it's those visual cues that help them see the way the language is put together.
And I went through all the Cascade lessons. There's some free lessons that you can do as a teacher and go through them. And
Those were created together with Margie Gillis. of
They're
Literacy
amazing.
House.
So wait, can you remind our viewers where can they go? Like if they wanted to go on, log on
So
tomorrow.
the cascadereading.com, you could make a free account. It's free for use. There's what's called the reader view that you can, like I said, cascade anything. Explorer view is this tool that does things for you. We have a passage library, which is aligned to the CKLA topics of graded, meaning starting 2nd through 8th grade level texts that are already cascaded with comprehension questions. And then there are some lessons that are on there also. So a lot of stuff.
And you were going to say
get
something?
started with.
I think that should
It's okay. Don't worry.
I was just going to say, for me, I'm in this learning process.
Me too. I'm
And
definitely in a learning
So this
process.
time last year, I feel like I started the journey and I've been reading and taking courses.
How did you guys all connect? Also, how did you guys all connect?
There was a cup of tea.
So,
Yeah.
I mentioned that I was at Haskins Laboratories for over 22 years. When I got there, Margie Gillis,
I know Margie.
was,
Margie's been
right.
on the Literacy
Margie
View.
was my colleague there. I was a postdoc and she was I think she was past postdoc level, but we were both there working on developing teacher trainings. She, of course, that was the time when they had a program to develop training for phonics.
Right. And I knew Margie because we both got our master's from Isabel Lieberman at the University of Connecticut. And she and I wrote the Literacy How Professional Learning series, one of the books being Syntax. So Margie said,
right. So I was telling Margie, we've talked about this for many years, but I was telling her how, again, I'm so frustrated that we're not getting enough of this language knowledge into the science of reading. And she said, well, you should meet my friend Nancy. So Nancy and I had tea in a cafe in Southern Connecticut.
Oh, what was the name of the cafe? I might have to go.
Audelise.
Oh, that's funny.
And the perspectives issues was hatched at that time.
Well, no, so I just have to back up. So we had this incredible conversation. I'm sure if there was a camera on us, it would have been a hilarious dynamic conversation. Hands flying. Oh my gosh. 2 hours at least. And at the end, I said, Julie, so what can I do to help? And she said, well, I'm really wanting to have teachers understand we know as much about language comprehension and what the brain is doing as we know about the reading circuit. She said, but we've got to get this information out. And I said, well, let me think what I might be able to do. And it happens that I sit on the Perspectives, Ideate Perspectives editorial board. So I said, I'll take this idea back and maybe we could make it a theme issue. So I did. And
now we have two.
and Julie, and as she mentioned earlier, Kelly Powell Smith went to work on this. And before we knew it, we had way more material than would ever fit in one issue. Even a digital issue can't go that long. And so we said, well, there's too much good material here. We're just going to turn it into 2 issues, which is what happened. And we're going to be talking more about those issues while we're here at the conference, the issues of perspectives, that is. So it all started with a cup of tea.
Yeah. And I want to say kudos to Nancy and to all of the editorial board at IDA.
Oh.
Because, again, I was in Haskins for 20 some years. And at that time, my mentors were people like Ken Pugh, who did one of the first neuroimaging studies of phonological interventions to show that it really does change the brain. And Hollis Scarborough and Margie Gillis and Sue Brady and all of this. And everybody was very involved with IDA, but I was a comprehension researcher. And I figured, well, IDA is about words and dyslexia, and I do comprehension. And so I didn't think that was my group.
No.
But now I'm joining up.
Well, because I do think.
But I wanted to say, thank you for having the vision and breadth to extend into the language comprehension side.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that. And I think 2 things are driving that. One, I think the work of Tiffany Hogan and others telling us, there's a whole lot of students who are struggling with reading where it's comprehension language rather that is contributing to that. And I also think we're continually frustrated as a field that students are getting to 3rd grade and still not doing well understanding what they're reading. And I personally, having watched this now for decades, I think we're not doing the right thing to sequence things. First, we focus on decoding, and then we'll talk about reading to understand. We have to build in this expectation that when we're reading a word, we should want to know what it means.
I think that's the most important thing.
And not just what it means, but what are the contexts where it's used?
Right.
Because that's where syntactic dimensions
right.
of meaning come in. Like you were saying, is
What
that
she was-
a verb or a noun? Like not just teaching the word meaning, but the context.
And if
That's
I leave it at the word level, always, then I don't have the opportunity to intentionally instruct at the phrase,
That's right.
sentence, discourse
And
level.
what Carla's illustrating in a session we're doing here tomorrow is that one of the most powerful parts of our structured literacy lesson is sentence dictation, where we can put these words like the bat flew out of the cave versus I used the bat to hit the ball, that we can have a conversation about, oh, there's the word bat in those 2 sentences. How are they being used differently? This is not a separate syntax lesson. This is talking about the decodable words in this context. So I think that this is a really powerful message of what could I do differently in what I'm already working on? How can I elevate some other aspects of that work? It takes teacher knowledge, but I think we have the knowledge and we need to use it.
And we're taking the teacher knowledge and we're taking the implementation piece. Like, then what could that look like in my classroom? And that's what Cascade was nice for me to go through those lessons. It helped me. That's what we've been talking through, was like, okay, if I now have this knowledge about syntax, in fact, I learned something today, right? What I might say about language that is oral language versus what I might say about language that is written, because if something is written, it is correct or not correct based on how I read it. So there's that oral language response versus the written. And also that this knowledge can be integrated throughout the day intentionally by word choice, by choosing topics.
Okay, so number one was word choice.
Right. So there's this intentionality of word choice in your phonics lesson.
Okay.
You want to talk phonics.
This is really helpful because we have so many teachers on here and we're desperate to know what
So
to
I'm
do next.
working through this.
Good. This is great.
It's going to be on the reading universe.
So
Wait, what did you say,
And
Nancy?
it will be on the reading universe. All of what Carol is talking about will be.
And you guys run professional development for schools and teachers and so forth as well, or no?
maybe that's coming.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, we have content that we are developing for it.
because I think teachers are desperate for professional development that looks more like this, because so much of my professional development now is still on decoding, but we're also desperate for support with comprehension, syntax, grammar, and all those other areas as well.
Well, and when I think about syntax, and I think about this time last year, and when I had the opportunity to form a relationship with Nancy, and she took me to Judy lesson, and she's like, "Are you keeping up?" I was like, "I'm keeping up. I'm holding on. I'm taking my teacher practitioner brain, and I am holding on to what Julie is saying.
Yeah.
I understand its importance. I've got to have some time to really take the information in, integrate, and start planning. But there's this whole idea that first is my knowledge, and then is how can I integrate it into something that is already structured, which is phonics. So I can go intentional word choice, that I intentionally plan my lesson.
Great.
So the words I'm choosing are going to build to these sentences.
Good.
That I am working to give kids more and more opportunities to learn about syntax. I'm also giving myself the opportunity to take something known, which is my phonics lesson, and to choose a word, pull it down in my phrases, pull it down in my sentences, and model. And every time I do it, I'll get more comfortable with that work and understanding that, hey, Carla, when you teach noun as your first grade standard, that wasn't the point. The point was this word, you know, bat. We have a lot of words we like to use. Watch. We have multiple words that we go back to that just being able to say it has more than one meaning is just the beginning.
It's just touchy component.
Understanding the context and what it's used, where it's used, and how it's used.
And I think another part of this for the teachers that are listening in is also to look at the words that we're asking the children to decode for whether or not that word exists in their listening lexicon, their listening vocabulary. And I use a word I like to use as an example is like the word cab, C-A-B. Perfectly decodable. If I know those 3 letter sound associations, that should be simple. But if I am a person, a child who has never heard of a cab, never seen a cab, I live out in Iowa somewhere, maybe never seen a cab in a city or anything, I could go cab over and over. And because I don't have a map for that, a word to map that to, I should say, I may not become fluent in pulling that together and blending that word together. So I think another part of this intentionality is also in the words that we are working to decode, that we're giving the vocabulary experience for them to
I love that you said that. And it's interesting. I've been working with a guy named Dave Marsh, shout out from Foundations, and he's been pushing me with my teachers. Rather than always telling kids, this is what the word means, our kids have experiences. Make the vocabulary sometimes more into an experience and say, hey, have you ever been to a beach? Maybe a lot of them have. And then they could start telling a story. And I think that, language has kind of taken the back burner in a lot of classrooms because teachers and educators right now feel so stressed out to make sure you get to this. And then principals sometimes will walk into your classroom. And if you're 1 minute overtime, you might get in trouble. You might get written up. And it's very terrifying. But kids lose out because when we can't have authentic conversations with kids and talk about these things, that could be problematic. So what recommendations can you give to educators who are struggling? Because like I've even seen in the field, some principals are like, okay, this has to get cut. Grammar instruction, nope, we're cutting it. You got to do this or that.
Well, I think what we have to do is flip that narrative and say, when you cut this, you're really taking away from building comprehension, helping kids learn to comprehend. And I think we've talked more about syntax, and Carla and I've had this conversation a lot about syntax as it relates to writing. But we haven't, as Julie's trying to get us to do, talked as much about syntax as it helps, it informs comprehension. I worked with kids for a while in learning how to determine what the topic was of informational text. And for a while, I tell this story a lot. We were creating passages on science topics. And I remember trying these passages out with the kids, and a little boy read the passage and he looked up and he said, I can't understand this because I don't already know it. Think about what he was really telling us. He was saying, okay, either he didn't know a key word in there,
Right.
so that rendered the whole thing pointless to him, not understandable to him. But more importantly, I think if we tell students, and the paragraph shrinking routine does this, is it has you focus on who or what is this about? And if we have kids learning that the who or what is going to be a person, a place, or a thing, that or an idea, that is what we should be looking for. And if that's all they get on the first reading, that would be good news. But I think we have kids reading a lot, saying the words a lot, not necessarily focusing on understanding. And I think that's a big shift that we could be working on without a lot of new training.
That's really important. And I think that that's important that we remember comprehension is the core of why we want what we want. And I think that that's a big piece of what we forget. And, it's telling for me, I'm seeing less of this now because I've been coaching in a certain school for a while, but year one of coaching in the school, kids were reading the oral fluency passage and they weren't able to retell it. So what did we really accomplish?
Exactly right.
Right?
That's a beautiful example.
I think there's another part of this that I just want to bring out is that, I know I'm not a classroom teacher, so I am in awe of everyone who is. So I hope that what I'm saying is gonna at least resonate a little bit with your lived reality. But I believe today there is so much language diversity in our classrooms, and that means that it's challenging for a teacher. But the classroom and the students are bringing so much language knowledge into the equation, and we need to, I think, take advantage of that as much as possible. So if something isn't understood in the language of instruction or isn't read well, it's possible that kid would do really well if it were in their home language. And that could be a springboard for conversation to help them build their language of instruction skills. And I think this is just general advice, but again, just to mention the IDA again, we have several articles in there which talk a lot about how to do this with African-American speaking students, and also Elsa and Ms. Hagen wrote for multilingual classrooms. And all of those three people were writing about the importance of mining the gold mine that's in your classroom in terms of language knowledge, and encouraging students to really share what they know in their own language and then leverage it for instruction in the instruction language.
I think that is so important. And I wish that there sometimes was less rigidity in the classrooms, because I think that sometimes, you might get a really strict teacher and it's like, fold your hands, quiet. Why are we always saying quiet? And that's not happening in all classrooms, but sometimes it is happening. And I see it because I'm in the trenches, and I just wish that, it wasn't that way. I have a question for you though. So there's been so much talk about dyslexia in the last couple of years. And we know a lot of students are dyslexic, possibly undiagnosed. Do you think that also applies to these areas of language comprehension as well? And do you think we're doing enough and we're where we should be in terms of that? Because in my perspective, I don't think so.
Yeah. So I think it's important for everyone to understand that the prevalence of dyslexia, it depends on which numbers you look at, but let's just say it's between 7 and 12%. Sometimes people say 10. I don't know what IDA officially says.
7 and 12%.
Somewhere in that. Okay. The disability that has now been termed developmental language disability has the exact same prevalence.
Wow.
And we just are not aware of that.
And it's just not getting the same level of attention, right?
It's not getting the same level of attention because often it's missed. And very often, if a person has dyslexia, they also have developmental language disability, like my own daughter. The comorbidity is between 50 and as high as 80%.
And so I go back to Tiffany Hogan's work, and we have an article that she has written on perspective as well. I mean, we really tried to, in these Julie and Kelly tried very hard to tap into as many different aspects of how this language comprehension, this syntax comes first idea impacts across diagnoses, assessment, instruction, understanding the concepts. And one other thing that Carla said a minute ago that I would like to pick up on is the article that Mary Ellen McDonald wrote on the difference between book language and oral language. And she does a brilliant job at a very short article, actually, of explaining why this is so different and why book language is more complex and why that requires more of this deliberate analysis of what is it going on in a sentence and how can we help students unpack that. And I would also throw in a plug for going back to diagramming sentences, but that may be a bridge too far. But I think that for especially second language learners and multi-language learners, with a program I was using some years ago, the children who found sentence diagramming the most helpful were our multi-language learners. Because they could see.
It's explicit instruction and sentence structure.
That's right.
Is what it is.
It makes a picture of it. It makes it very, very tangible. Kind of like what Cascade
That's what
does.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
To me,
There's a
Cascade is the updated, it's doing the same sort of thing, except Cascade is doing it automatically and without all of the sort of technical aspects of it. It's just a pleasure to see it, and you're getting visual cues as you read, whereas a diagram is a problem-solving activity. Reading in Cascade is as I'm actually putting the words together, it's giving me those
First, when I tried Cascade, I thought you had to type in it, but then I realized you could copy and paste any text.
So if you're working with foundations or you're working with any kind of CKLA material or whatever.
Oh my gosh. You could put, wait till my teacher sees it this year.
Well, and just think about
Wow.
how just thinking, this is something that it has helped me with, is thinking about syntax, and then the way that Cascade helped me think about syntax and its role in fluency and fluency's role in comprehension. So to me, we've had this conversation where, when you're teaching kids to scoop, there's intentionality behind
100%, right?
Who or what?
And I think, can I just say something also? I think that when authors create books, they should be more mindful of where they place words in a book. I've actually called authors that I actually love and said, hey, your book is really hard to scoop. Can you be more intentional about the phrasing and fluency as you're, designing the pages? What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm encouraging those people I know who are working on decodable text
Yes.
to not forget that they should be mindful of these syntactic movements. Because again, there's no reason that we can't put these two worlds together from the beginning.
Exactly.
And it works. I feel
Exactly.
like for syntax, we maybe were explicit with writing.
Mhm.
And
Correct.
Nancy has categories that that she created, and she has, I always get them. It's repeat,
Repeat,
replace,
replace, and reword.
reword. I don't know if I got them in the right order, but we
was good.
teach.
Repeat. Wait, let me get.
right.
Wait, let me get that again. My brain doesn't work that fast.
So like the duck.
Repeat.
So you could repeat like the flock of ducks. If you had a sentence, you would say the flock of ducks swam in the pond. And then you would replace they
For ducks.
they duck under for a snack. So that's your replace. And then we could reword the feathered friends swam back to the dock. So in that scenario, we teach that as writers. We aren't going to say duck, 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 duck.
Right.
Way down. There's a very intentionality. But now as readers, we're teaching kids to unlock the code, right? Oh, wait, the author did this. If they have the who or what is duck, what are the other ways that it's being represented?
And
in
I
the
think
text?
that's so important. I think that we do need to be more mindful, and we do need to take time to ask more questions. And we have to, those questions, it's so simple. It almost relates to almost like a gist a little bit as well, which I know
Absolutely.
Leslie Wood is going
Right,
to talk
right.
about and Think SRSD. I became passionate. And I don't think that we all give enough time to that. But the core is really to understand what we're
What we're
talking about and
reading.
what we're reading.
Right, yeah.
And that's,
So we only have a couple more minutes. And I want to get to a couple more things. Okay.
sure.
All right. So I have some top ones circled. Quick question. Strategies. How do you guys feel about strategies in terms of comprehension instruction? Helpful for kids? Syntax
I don't think it's
strategies?
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Or
So one of the
syntax
things that I'm
strategies.
going to say at my talk on Friday, I think we need to be clear what we mean by comprehension.
And strategies.
Strategy. Well, strategies are not comprehension.
That's right.
Comprehension is the process of gluing words together as you pick each one off the page, right? That is the process of comprehension. Strategies like finding the gist, finding a main idea, answering a comprehension question, all of those things, those are measures of comprehension, but it is not itself comprehension. So when I talk about syntax being first in comprehension, it's let's make sure the brain is operating correctly to get to that proper comprehension. Strategies are great for measuring comprehension, but if you are believing that that is teaching comprehension, then I believe respectfully that you've missed the boat.
And can I go back, and we should have done this at the very beginning.
It's okay.
But
This
I
is the
would
literacy
love
view.
for Julie to define syntax
I
in the same way she just defined comprehension, because I
Perfect.
think that
Yeah.
just having something to hold on to, I continue to say I'm a learner in this world
Yep.
right now, for sure. And just sometimes when you're learning something new, like you just gave us,
Yeah.
you know, what does comprehension mean? What is it not? And what is it? Could you do
Right.
that for some
So-
too?
So I'm going to give you a definition which does not sound familiar. I'm
That's
afraid.
okay. I would love that.
Is everybody ready?
Linguistic definition.
All
I
right.
think we're very used to thinking about parts of speech and word order. And syntax is neither of those things, although parts of speech, of course, is a central component of it. But when you focus on word order, you're leaving out the majority of the world's languages that do not use word order. Many languages
very
have free
interesting.
word order. And I have a map. I can share it with you. You can
Wow.
post it. There's a very compelling map that shows you that we are the English language is in the minority of relying on word order to specify relationships between things.
Wow.
So the actual definition of syntax is the relationship between pieces of a sentence. So for example, your subject is in a relationship with the verb. The direct object is in a relationship with that verb, right? So syntax is just the mechanism that the language uses to communicate those relationships. It's the who did what to whom.
That's
right?
exact. I was just going to say.
That's why it's so important. But when we talk about syntax in general, you have to think your different languages cash out syntax very differently. English, it's word order. Other languages, it's word endings. Some languages, like the Slavic languages, will put known information first, and I have that right? Yeah, known information
I
first.
think the Slavic
And
language.
and new information comes at the end of the sentence when you're organizing your sentence. If you think about it, right? The new thing is at the end of the sentence. In English, we don't do it that way. We just put a word a word and that tells you, oh, this is a new thing, right? So you have to sort of dig into the linguistics of each language to know how it works.
That's very
Generally
interesting.
speaking, though, syntax is all about the who did what to whom. It's those relationships and finding them. And again, if you don't know what things are in relationship to other things, then the situation model that you're building, I hope that's a term that people are comfortable with. Basically, your general sort of understanding of the situation that the sentence is describing, it will be wrong because you don't have the basic who did what to whom. It's like building a building. If you don't have a strong foundation that's holding up that roof, it's going to collapse.
But I think there is a connection for me as a practical level between the grammatical building blocks and that who did what to whom.
Of course.
Because the who's are going to be nouns.
It's all defined.
Right.
in terms
Did
of
what
that.
they're going to
That's
be
right.
the actions or
Yes.
verbs. So I do think that we can help put those two worlds together, because the overarching term for both the grammatical building blocks and syntax is a grammar of a language.
Yeah.
So I think we get a little confused in our terminology, but they are related.
Thank you.
For sure.
Okay, so two more things.
Yeah.
Quickly, two big top takeaways for practitioners tomorrow. What would be two top takeaways that you want them to walk away with?
That it is important to teach syntax. I think that I have seen and this is in my slides too, a number of my colleagues who have talked about the science of reading make the point that our brains are not evolved for reading. And you might think our brains are evolved for language, so maybe I don't need to teach language explicitly. But the fact is that we learn what we're exposed to. And as Carla said, the book language that we need for academic achievement is very different from the languages we're exposed to. And that's where instruction is really important. So to believe that it's not important to teach syntax, I think is a mistake. Obviously, the implementation still needs to get worked out, and where the timing in your day gets figured out.
And
That's
we'll need
big
a lot of
question.
help from you
It's a big
guys.
question. We're working on that.
The literacy
but
view will be
I
counting on you, ladies.
You
And
can't-
hopefully this is not the last conversation that we have. People are going to reach out, people are going to ask for help, and hopefully this conversation can definitely continue.
And my point, which I think I've already mentioned, but just to reiterate, is I think we have to really think about the decoding work, our phonics work, and this language processing syntax work have to happen concurrently from the very beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I can read a word, I should be doing this language aspect, because the longer we delay that, the further disconnected engagement is. Attention, I think this whole aspect of this, which is a executive function, attentional part, we have to be paying attention to what these words mean, not just how to decode them.
Yeah. And I have one third thing, if I can.
please.
Listen, we love it. We'll take it. We'll take it.
To what Nancy said, but we haven't talked about this yet, and it's so important. We need to assess language level
Yay! I would go
skills
to ask that.
from the beginning.
Yes.
And again,
How,
shout out to
Can you
Perspective
help us with that?
and my theme editor, Kelly Powell-Smith, who was the lead author on Acadians, if anybody uses that.
Yes,
She's
I
the one-
do.
She's the one that wrote it, basically, with her friends, but she, again, in perspectives, and I want to say, I'll just stop a minute. We keep talking about perspectives. Perspectives on Language and Literacy is a member benefit of the International Dyslexia Association. You can join for not a lot of money. It's like $40, I think. It's
not
very
free.
well worth it.
Okay.
And if anybody's not yet a member, I encourage that if they can manage
We could
that.
put it in the show notes.
We can put it in the show
Please do.
notes.
That would be
You
fabulous.
ladies will help me with all that. Okay, good.
Even if you don't continue to get access to these, anyway, Kelly Powell Smith has a whole 3-page table that outlines the various assessments of syntax for all of the
exists.
tiers of an MTS test service model. So that's something that's really important. But even if you don't do that, listen to your students read out loud. If they're not reading in a natural way, odds are they have a syntax problem because they're not able to get again. Assuming we're not talking about decoding.
Okay,
Right.
Right.
It's either going
Once
to be
the decoding is more
or it's going to be
solid.
syntax. If
Right.
you've got a third grader who is hesitating, who is not able to phrase things properly, that child needs extra language level instruction on syntax.
I think that was such an important point you just made. I think that was such an important point.
I think that
Something that we want teachers to take away
I want you to
tomorrow.
take away that it's okay that you're learning as a teacher.
Yay!
That it's okay that you don't know this. You have to give yourself grace, and then you have to lean into finding places that you can learn. Understanding that language comprehension is unconstrained. It's constantly growing. However, it needs to be instructed intentionally, and that leaning into places that you can learn and just give your, embedding and not siloing. We don't want our phonics to be only at the word level. We're talking about fluency. It's leaning, leading us to comprehension. We know that all the work should be integrated because that's what we do naturally as leaders.
100%.
However, when we're learning it as teachers, we learn it in silos because that's how we're being taught.
And it's almost like in the literacy world, we had like literacy camps, the balanced literacy camp, the science of reading camp. And it's almost like it's happening a little bit in the science of reading too. Oh, yeah, phonics is my wheelhouse or comprehension is my wheelhouse. No, we have to all.
Because we're working for skilled, proficient readers.
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
That's what we want. So I would just say lean in. We'll give all the show notes, like of all the places that
Great.
teachers can go and just begin to build their
Wonderful.
understanding.
Okay, so it wouldn't be the literacy view without something that you think is BS in literacy. I didn't bring my BS button. It's somewhere. I don't know where it is, but anything that you think is BS that we need to let go of.
Well, I'm just going to say the opposite of that is that it's all about teacher knowledge and then teacher implementation. And the curriculum can be something that gives you guidance and gives you resources, but teacher knowledge and then how to implement it in your classroom is like really where the magic happens because the teacher's driving the bus.
And one last thing.
Wait,
I'm sorry. You have a BS.
I'm so excited. I figured out what is my BS thing.
Wait, where's the BS
It's
button?
the
Faith is
idea.
probably- wait, Faith, if you're watching, I forgot the BS button, so maybe you could push it at home for me.
That the unit of comprehension is the text.
Wait, say that again.
Or
The unit of
Like, what are you understanding? Are you understanding the text? Are you understanding the paragraph? The unit of comprehension is the next word, right? If you think about this in terms of the process of building knowledge that you're doing as you're bringing each word off the page, you have to integrate that word into everything you've understood so far. That's where comprehension happens. I call it the glue in between the words. That's where comprehension happens. Very often we think it's the unit is the paragraph. Say, write your gist statement, write your main idea. Oh, you comprehended it. A kid might have only understood one sentence out of 5, and maybe they got that answer right because they guessed. You don't have any idea what's really going on under the hood. So,
And I guess related to that, it would be that comprehension is answering comprehension questions.
right, it's the same idea. Yeah.
That really comprehension is the processing of the language to understand what the words mean. Then you should be able to answer questions. But if you didn't understand it,
And I think that's a really big one for me because in my balanced literacy experience, unfortunately, it was 15 years of just asking questions. What happened first? What happened next? What happened last? And it didn't go deep enough.
And
because they probably didn't know what the word, what it meant in the first place.
But and it's a different cognitive activity to answer that question. You're actually drawing on different brain networks. Maybe not every kid is so good at that. Maybe they understood 100%, but they don't express themselves well. I see this with my kid with my daughter with developmental language disability all the time. A child who has a developmental language disability, expressive language is impossible for them. But maybe maybe she understood it, maybe they understood it. So adding that extra level of we have to assess, right? But understand that is not the comprehension itself. That
and I think
is an extra thing.
for a while, it was just these running records that just had a list of questions. And then if you didn't get one question right, sorry, you're not moving to the next level. And that was just not the best approach. We all know that.
Yeah.
Anyway, ladies, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being on the Literacy View. These ladies are my first people that we live podcasted. We live streamed. I mean, I think this is the most amazing thing to be at a literacy conference and just be live together, live streaming. So some people weren't able to fly out to Montana. How do we take this work and spread it worldwide? Here it is. So thank you. And this is the Literacy View, changing life one view at a time. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Okay.
Gosh,
Thank you.
Hi, No BS Besties. It's Judy from the Literacy View, and I wanted to announce some really great news. Faith and I have launched our own consulting services for all of our No BS Besties. So check it out on theliteracyview.com. We have data chats. We have a No BS Bestie helpline. We have Don't Make Me Press the BS Button screeners and assessment work that we do. We'll help you build classroom libraries that build readers. We'll help you with gamifying education and professional learning. We're also really excited to launch our exciting Science of Reading aligned reading retreats. We'll find you, we'll set up, and let's get this party started. We also have parent literacy events that we could help support you with. We could also connect you to literacy experts in the field, create a No BS literacy community and WhatsApp groups for your school. And also, we're interested in helping you setting up a strong pre-K and foundational skills program in your school. Choose your own literacy adventure. Contact faithandjudy@gmail.com for our No BS literacy services. And also, you could find out more about all our services on theliteracyview.com.